Keimpe fue el director de Fab Lab en Ámsterdam, Holanda, y del Laboratorio de Aprendizaje Creativo en la Waag Society. Actualmente tiene su propio emprendimiento, una agencia de proyectos que ayuda a manejar y desarrollar proyectos en la industria creativa. Hola Keimpe, soy Ángela, ella es Beatriz y somos de Aprendamos. Cuéntanos un poco sobre ti y qué es la Waag Society.
My name is Keimpe here. I work for Waag Society, which is an expertise center in the Netherlands, focusing on the area of arts, science and technology. Today we're sitting in the Fab Lab, which you see here. Fab Lab is one of the facilities of the organization Waag. Waag is focusing on societal innovation. We tend to focus on the creative application of new technologies in a variety of societal domains, such as culture, the arts, sustainability, but also education. So I'm responsible for the education program, which is called the Creative Learning Lab. And within the Creative Learning Lab, we set out a research agenda focusing on mobile learning, multi-sensory learning, how is the human body an interface to education, to learning. And we focus on another theme called co-creation. So how can you translate the principles behind Fab Lab, digital fabrication, open design, personal digital fabrication? How can you translate this in an educational context?
Waag Society es un instituto de arte, ciencia y tecnología con sede en Ámsterdam. En su página puedes encontrar los links a muchos de sus proyectos de investigación enfocados a la comunidad.
El Laboratorio de Aprendizaje Creativo tiene links para acceder a todos los proyectos que se han realizado desde sus inicios. Si te interesa conocer más sobre los detalles de alguno, solo tienes que ingresar al link del proyecto que te interese.
So to give you a little intro on what we actually do within the Creative Learning Lab, we set the stage for experimentation. So we work with, for instance, artists in residence, artists in residencies, like for instance now we have somebody from Rensselaer Polytech in New York City, New York State. Name is Heidi Boisvert, focusing on embodied learning. So for instance now in this kind of experimental stage we prototype, we hack the Kinect, for instance, focusing on motion capture technologies, sensor-based interaction technologies, all referencing to this idea that learning is flexible, learning is more or less also geared towards the human body. How do you interact now with education, and what do you conceive as being learning? So these are kind of big questions we try to translate on a more concrete level within experiments, and it's about prototyping, it's about hacking, it's about building demonstrators, which eventually turn out to be kind of contextualized applications. So what we try to do there is develop projects, for instance, that focus on the different themes which I just mentioned, for instance mobile learning. So we developed a mobile gaming platform, a locative media platform, that enables teachers, students to build their own locative media games, to transform traditional curriculum content in the context of a gaming space. You can build your own GPS games, you can again translate this traditional curriculum content into a role-playing game, into a collect and trade. So for us it's not about creating the games but setting out the platform, so the people will actually develop eventually the application. They will provide and come up with the meaningful innovations. So this was an example of a project. On the other side we conduct a lot of research. So what is the impact of an application such as, for instance, Games Atelier or this locative media platform? How do you can conceive this in terms of learning effects? So we did a lot of research on the idea of putting traditional curriculum content in this gaming space, and we found out together with some research partners that it has a strong effect on knowledge transfer. It also increased this kind of motivation to learn. It actually created an intrinsic motivation among students to learn, to work with this platform and to get to know stuff.
Bueno, sabemos que Fab Lab está presente en varias ciudades. ¿Crees que nos podrías contar un poco más sobre cómo funciona Fab Lab en Ámsterdam?
To make a connection to Fab Lab, where we are now sitting. My aim is to get this whole concept of Fab Lab more or less into education space. So this means to set up concrete Fab Labs within schools, that will be one, but also on a more abstract level, right, to think about what education actually is. So what you see here is an open design space. People with a creative idea come here. They don't know each other. They come in they share their ideas, their thoughts on projects, on prototypes, on well, basically stuff they want to build. And in this crossover, you find yourself in this kind of multidisciplinary approach, where people collaboratively work within this context, which we call open design. How could something you develop be a starting point for somebody else to further develop upon? How can you make different variations or deviations on existing documentation of projects, of experiments? So this is what Fab Lab is all about. So we have a lot of prototypes here, projects, results from people who got into this kind of design process. And I always think it's really interesting to see that people coming in a Fab Lab on Tuesdays or Thursdays, where we have the open Fab Lab days, they always come in a bit insecure. Can I use all the machine? Can I get guidance in actually working with these machines? And well, the basic answer is yes. You can use every machine, you get the guidance for free. The only thing what we ask from you is that you document and share. So we have a wealthy repository, the whole Fab Lab community, and I think there are now over 100 Fab Labs scattered throughout the world. So in the back you see all the Fab Labs connected through a video conferencing set. And this is interesting, especially if you talk about education. So one of the formats we put on top of the Fab Lab infrastructure, the physical Fab Lab infrastructure, is a distributed educational program called Fab Academy. And Fab Academy is all about the theoretical principles behind digital fabrication, open design. So 16 professors from different countries provide this educational course, and one of the leading figures, the founding father of Fab Lab, is Neil Gershenfield, a professor at MIT. And I just watched a talk from him during a Fab Academy session, and I was amazed, because this is what it's actually about. He was saying that from principle, Fab Lab is not accredited. So what is the value of a diploma? What is the value of this piece of paper? So the Fab Academy does not provide you with a diploma. It's kind of, well, on a more activist approach, it's a way of living. It's, I think, the way new economies are going to emerge. So this is, I think, an interesting space, a space for creativity, a space where people meet each other, an extelligent space. It's not about intelligence anymore. It's not about this kind of internal mindset. It's more or less how you make use of the talents, the experiences, the knowledge of your community, of your social networks. And I think Fab Lab is a good demonstration of how this could work. A physical space where people meet and where people collectively work towards innovation. And how to translate this into education, that is the big question, because schools tend to be closed. So seeing Fab Lab as a social hub, it's for schools, and I know schools in the Netherlands, I don't know how this is in the rest of Europe, but schools tend to be a bit hesitant in opening the doors to their local community. They're kind of closed, and I think this has to do something with a paradigm shift. We need to break down this traditional concept of schools having four walls, being framed from the outside world. I think education, schools are a transparent reflection of society. So let's act to that. And talking about education, talking about learning, I think again here there should be a paradigm shift. One of the things we were talking about was this idea of invisible learning. Maybe you can call it blended learning. Maybe you can call it learning by doing, accidental learning. All types of naming and maybe framing of this new emerging ways of how we conceive learning. And I think in essence, learning is, and all references to this idea that learning is time and place independent. It happens everywhere, it's everywhere. So how do you facilitate that? Is that from this physical institution with 4 walls from 9 to 4? I think not, and I think we should think more or less about providing an unlimited access to learning and develop the tools that facilitate that process. So this is why we try to focus on in the Creative Learning Lab, seeing all these new creative technology trends emerge and how can you use them, how can you utilize them, how can you utilize them in combination to come up with new solutions that actually speak to the minds of young people, of students, and help them to express themselves. Because in a way, I think if you look at education, and one of the core visions of the Creative Learning Lab is, if you look at education and if you look at society and the future of a society or an economy, we don't know how the world will look like in 10 years from now. So why do we train pupils now towards this concept of competence development, of competencies which will probably not hold for the upcoming 5 to 10 years. So I think you at one point need flexible, adaptive knowledge workers, people who are not afraid to actually change with changing paradigms, changing situations. And that's, I think, in the core, these are the fundamentals. Flexibility, adaptiveness are fundamentals of creativity. So creativity should be in the core of education. And we now have all the tools to our disposal. Technologies. Utilize them, use them, and come up with interesting solutions. I think, and this is where we stand for, dare to prototype, dare to share. Be open. Yeah.
Debe haber una cantidad enorme de proyectos dentro de todos los laboratorios de Fab Lab. ¿Tienes alguno alrededor que nos puedas mostrar en este momento?
So one of the examples I want to show you is an example which we call a prosthesis program. It's a collaboration between Fab Lab Amsterdam, Indonesia and India, where we try to work on open sourcing this whole domain of building and designing prosthetics. And the idea of this prosthetic program is to come up with a $100 costing underleg prosthesis. And the idea is that we work together with different Fab Labs, but also with institutes that have a lot of knowledge about the ergonomics of the human body. And here I think this is an interesting part. It's the localization. So what we try to do is come up with a generic design of an underleg prosthesis that is actually being built using local materials, like bamboo, for instance. And here you can go into a Fab Lab when you have a horrible accident, when you have had a horrible accident and you lost your underleg. You hump in a Fab Lab and you build, using this generic design, you build a generic design of an underleg prosthesis, and then you can use all the machines in the Fab Lab to further tailor-made it and let it fit to your stump, for instance. And then you, well, literally walk out a Fab Lab with your own made underleg prosthesis. And I think these are interesting examples, and one of which is kind of connecting to this whole domain of prosthetics is a guy called Eric. And Eric comes in here in a wheelchair, and he had a personal design question. As somebody sitting in a wheelchair, he's moving around the city, and cities are not designed for people sitting in wheelchairs. So he's got this kind of problem with the fact that on a concrete level, if he wants to go into a tram or a metro, there's always a little gap between the metro and the metro station. And he always has to ask somebody if somebody can push him in the metro. So he wanted to be self-supporting in this. So he's building, this is the first prototype, which is one element of what is going to be a chain, a tank tire. He's building a tank out of his wheelchair, so you can actually roll in the metro or the tram without having to ask somebody else. And this is interesting. It's a personal design question, and it's a learning process on itself, because Eric had to make 3D models. He had to investigate which types of materials to use. He has to do a lot of research, which he did not do on his own. He got a lot of help from the community, people who are intrinsically motivated to get involved in this core learning process. And look where we are now. This is a first prototype. The second one is actually now a whole tank tire with an explicit emphasis on the fact that he's not building a new type of wheelchair. No, he's building an add-on. So at one point when he finished his project and built the add-on for his wheelchair, other people can use his designs and make their own add-ons, their tank tire add-ons for their own wheelchairs. So these are some examples of projects which we conduct here, and it's beautiful because it's international. It's a collaborative approach where different Fab Labs, different people are involved in this, I think, learning process. In the core, this is education, isn't it?
En la página de Fab Lab no solo puedes encontrar el proyecto de prótesis del que Keimpe nos estaba conversando, puedes explorar todos los Fab Labs alrededor del mundo y creemos que pronto va a haber uno en Ecuador. Realmente es un increíble ejemplo de innovación social para cerrar esta entrevista. Muchas gracias, Keimpe, por tu tiempo y bueno, esperamos saber pronto más de ti.
Un gusto, chao.
Chao.